Hi there, this is Chris from MoneyHub, and this video looks at the best travel money options for New Zealanders traveling to Fiji. So of course, Fiji is a popular place, usually over the New Zealand winter, and it can be a very good value place. It can be quite an expensive place. It really depends what resorts you've booked or hotels or what you plan to do. But the important thing is to know that there's many ways to change New Zealand dollars into Fijian dollars, and this guide has been published to show you the different options and what they all cost. So I'm going to go through it now. We do have a separate video for using cash, different financial products for traveling in Fiji. That's linked to this video, but I just want to talk through the guide itself within the context of this video here. So first of all, there's three different options. You can use cash, you can use a New Zealand issued debit and credit cards, and you can also use travel money cards. We've put those as the three options. Of course, they're certainly not exclusive. You can do a combination of all three. That's perfectly normal. Say, for example, you may want to book your hotels and stuff with your credit card, and then at the same time you use a travel money card to withdraw money, which then also is something to do with using cash there. So there's ways to, combine it all. But the important thing is that you're not ripped off on fees and you're not ripped off on bad exchange rates, which happen all the time. So if we just go straight into it using cash, we've got a separate video here which shows you the problems that come about by changing money, at the airport or pre-ordering it so that you have Fiji dollars when you go away. We've explained in the video, which you'll also see on this guide, that there is a huge margin for Fiji dollars, and the fact that, one bank will provide you 5% more or 5% better rate than, say, TravelX or number one currency, whereas Wise is better by another 5% than that. So you can obviously see that if you use the wrong tool, then the wrong service, then it's going to be expensive. So we've explained that, and we're very pro people just taking things very slowly. Of course, you need cash when you're in Fiji, and that's absolutely no problem at all. But there's ATMs there which you can withdraw from. You don't need to change money at the airport before you get to Fiji. And also changing money from New Zealand dollars to Fijian dollars when you get to Nandi, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be, well, you've got these are our rates. What are you going to do? And then you're not getting the market rate. You're getting a very poor sort of kiosk, wanted or not type of rate. So just be aware of that. And that's why we have published a 10-minute video just explaining the different options there. So we know that the foreign exchange route, the FX rate, at the Forex booths are not that favorable. And they're much better, for example, at Westpac. But then the Westpac rates won't be as good as the Wise rates. And then if you're using your bank credit card or your bank debit card, there's also fees on top of that. So not always the best there either. We've summed up using Fiji dollars cash, pros and cons here. So of course it's got universal acceptance. You can use it everywhere. And of course, if you're going further afield, you will need cash. They're not going to take cards. And then there's no issue, of course, of card machine problems, and that you can just settle a payment straight away. Some cons of it or some reservations are the fact that you are going to be traveling around with some cash. It can be a problem if you lose it, if it gets stolen, saying that Fiji is relatively safe. And then also the problem with using cash is that too many people change it at Nandi Airport or change it at Auckland Airport or collect it up with bad FX rates, and they just get completely ripped. And so we don't want to see that. So we want people to be aware of it. What to do with spare Fiji dollars on the last day? What we suggest that is basically spend them, of course, and try and make part payments with things. If you're left down, say you've got $100 left, you've still got some hotel bill to pay, or you're going out for lunch, just pay it down with the cash, because you don't really want to be left with Fiji dollars when you're leaving the airport. They're not that useful back in New Zealand, of course, because you'll get a bad exchange rate, and it may be some time before you return to Fiji. So we've summarized some options there, but it's just good to be aware of what's available to do. And of course, you can always give them to someone else who's traveling, but that's really at your discretion. Now, using a New Zealand issued debit and credit cards. So this is with regards to bank debit cards and credit cards. They're widely accepted, of course, in larger resorts, but you will pay fees on them. plus the rates are not that clear. So where we've looked at the MasterCard rate and we've looked at the Visa rate, we're not sure exactly what the banks are going to be processing them at, because of course they take their own commission and they take fees on top of that. For example, Kiwi Bank is doing 2.5%, but whether or not that's at the Visa rate or there's another rate within that, we're not sure, because there's a bank fee which they internally charge Visa, or some banks do anyway. So that makes it a little bit less clear. But if we just get back to the guide, what we've said here is that just be aware that you will be charged, but of course they are convenient. So if you're going to use your card over in Fiji, it's going to be widely accepted where cards, of course, are accepted, as long as it's a Visa or a MasterCard. For Amex, there are some limitations with that in Fiji. It's not so widely accepted as they are within New Zealand, so just be aware there. And then you can always use your card as a backup. So should you have any issues, if you have one or two cards, well, then no issues at all. A payment will be able to go through. And then tracking, of course, as you spend, you've got a full list of everything that you've, of course, spent your money on. So you can kind of budget accordingly from that and just keep track of everything. Now, the cons of using your debit or credit card overseas are going to be the foreign exchange fees and the bank exchange rates, which you don't really know what they're going to be until you've been charged. So just be aware of that. You can get this scam called a dynamic currency conversion. That's when, unfortunately, it pops up. Would you like to pay in Fijian dollars or would you like to pay in New Zealand dollars? People think, oh, I'll pay in New Zealand dollars. But what happens is there's often a 5, 6, 7% foreign exchange fee for doing so. It's just a big scam. We've got a video specific to this, which is linked down below. So if you want to know more, just be aware of it. And then cards are not always welcome throughout Fiji. There's a lot of cash in Fiji. So be aware that it's not going to be useful if you're going down to the market, getting on a local bus, things like that, tips and stuff like that as well. So you will need some cash there, and cards aren't going to be suitable for every payment. And then while there's very little bank fraud within Fiji, just be aware that you could lose it if it gets sucked up by the ATM. If there's any issues, then that can be a problem, which is why it's good to have a backup card and some cash as well. And then finally, moving on to the travel money card. So we've done a whole comparison in travel money cards, which we routinely keep up to date. We've found that really it's a winner takes all type of market. There's the legacy products, which are things like TravelX, Cash Passport. But then all of our research and all of our videos have done that we've shown that the exchange rate is incredibly high by using the Wise the Wise debit card or having a Wise account. Now, you won't be able to prepay Fijian dollars. Many times a Wise for sort of different currencies will let you top up, Fijian a certain currency, so euros, pounds, but often, some other more exotic currencies, perhaps the Mexican peso or Singaporean dollar. But for Fiji dollar, you can't. So you can only have your account in New Zealand, which is fine, in New Zealand dollars. And then as you transact, it's going to deduct it at the current exchange rate with the fee. And as we've outlined, that the fee is 0.89%, which is very clear, but at the same time, the exchange rate is clear as well. So you can see that at the current time, it was 1.355 less the fee, which brings it down to about 1.34. Now, this is much higher, of course, just as a pure comparison than things like TravelX, which of course is the cash rate here is 1.25. And then for number one currency FX, you can see that the rate here is 1.26. So it makes a big difference, the 1.34 versus the 1.25. You're effectively getting about 8% more for your money for no apparent reason other than you're just using a better product. So be aware that we think the Wise card is great, but of course it's not going to be for everyone. And so it's just worth having a read through and seeing what the pros and cons are. For us, we see that it's got great rates and you can use multiple currencies in it. So should you just be traveling beyond Fiji, Probably not. But if you did, well, then you can also hold currencies there. Very transparent with its fees. And then once you've installed the app, it's good to go. You're going to get the notification every time you buy something. Of course, you can turn those off if you want. But it's really good for keeping track of spending. Now, there is a limit for free withdrawals, and you get up to $350 New Zealand per month. It's about 400 and so, or 470 Fijian dollars at the current exchange rates. And beyond that, you'll pay a 1.75% fee for taking the money out. But still, that can be a lot cheaper than, say, the likes of Kiwi Bank, which will charge you 2.5%. It won't probably have the best exchange rates based on research that we've done and just general kind of understanding of the products that they offer. And then you'll also get a $6 per withdrawal fee as well for an ATM. So really good to be aware of these things. And then just finally concluding that, the acceptance, it's not going to be a credit card. So that's good, we think, but we'll put it as a con. So if you run out of money, well, then that's it. You need to top up with your bank account. And then just briefly, it's going to be accepted anywhere there's Visa or MasterCard. So that's really, really useful as well. And finally, if we just go through some must-know tips, there's lots of ATMs, so don't be afraid that you're going to be stuck. Of course, when you land in Nandi, there's a couple of ATMs right then and there. And the Fiji ATM limit is around $500 to $2,000. We know that, of course, it's aimed largely at visitors, not so much locals, and those large withdrawal limits. So if you are going to withdraw lots of money, be aware that your bank may charge you an ATM fee. So you'll probably want to minimize that by taking out larger amounts. At the same time, you don't want to be stuck with a whole bunch of Fijian dollars that you can't spend at the end and have to change back at some bad exchange rate. And just be aware that there are ATM fees. It's going to just vary on who the providers are. Tipping isn't that common, but of course, Fiji is a country which does rely on tourism, so it's very much appreciated. And we've just written some guidance there. And then just cash is king. We can't really emphasize that enough. So be aware that you will need cash no matter what, and just getting it cost effectively is going to be the most enjoyable way to spend it. Then some people don't realize this, but there is a VAT, which is the same as GST refund scheme. So if you want to do that, please get to the airport early, like you do it on the way back. You've got to spend at least $500. It's going to be around 9%. It's got to be approved retailers. We've linked to a comprehensive guide from the Fijian government that walks you through it. But do it now enough time. Don't show up at the airport 2 hours before you fly out with all your stuff. You still have to check in. It's going to be stressful. You do need to allow a couple more hours on top of that. And then just some frequently asked questions here. How's the exchange rate? It usually goes between 1.3 and 1.4. You can check the live rates on it in time through the MoneyHub website, or just do a quick Google of it. And can I use a travel money card or a debit card or credit card anywhere within Fiji? The answer to that is yes, for established places, shops, hotels, resorts, things like that, tour companies. But for like remote areas or just general sort of out and about, then cash is going to be the best choice and the most widely accepted way to pay. Fiji, is it expensive? It really depends on what you want. It could be really good value. At the same time, it can be very, very expensive. It really depends what you've booked and what you plan to do. And what's the best way to get the most Fiji dollar for my NZD? The answer really is look at solutions like Wise. That's one example, but it is the leading one from our research. And really just avoid the foreign exchange kiosks and counters, because you're going to pay them lots of money for spending your own money. The rates are better with Wise. You can track everything with app. This is certainly not a push for Wise, even though we have a link here saying visit Wise. It's just to make people aware of it and why it has become a very popular way to travel in terms of paying for things. Are there restrictions of how much money you can bring in? For any tourist, this isn't really going to be relevant. You can bring up to about 10,000 Fijian dollars without it being declared. That we just put in for relevance, but it's not really that important. And then what's the most common payment method for local transport, things like that, is going to be cash. So finally, we think that having some cash on you is absolutely essential, but get it very, very cheaply through a minimal ATM fee, and also with the best exchange rates. We think Wise ticks those boxes. At the same time, your New Zealand bank account will also tick those boxes to a degree, and you can withdraw some money when you arrive, should you want to, at Nandi Airport, and then you'll have Fiji dollars in your hand, ready to move straight through and not have any problems of not having any money, because it's always a bit stressful flying in. Often the planes can be late at night. Oh, I don't have any money. Does this guy want to tip? What am I going to do? It's just unpleasant. So if you go to the ATM when you arrive, those things are sorted. And we do recommend that as an option to consider, well above just having a wad of New Zealand dollars that you change once you get to Nandi, because it's going to be a bad value exchange rate. Bank cards, of course, convenient, and the Wise debit card certainly works well, especially with the free $350 withdrawal. And so you're not going to pay any fees on that. So we just say a balanced approach, combine travel money, combine it with cash, use your bank cards, i.e. credit card, to pre-book accommodation if you need to. If you've got a rewards card, you'll earn points on that. Of course, you'll pay the FX fees, but that's a cost of doing business. But just be aware that you don't want to be ripped off. So make sure that you limit the amount of cash that you change at any airport to around zero. That way you're going to get the best exchange rates. So that's a summary of going to Fiji. It's a wonderful place, and huge fan of the Coral Coast personally, but we wanted to put this video out just to explain the pros and cons and pitfalls that some people fall into. So if you do have any questions, we keep our guides constantly up to date, and we want them to be as comprehensive as possible. So feel free to leave comments below. We will respond, and we do find those incredibly useful. Thanks very much for watching, and have a nice trip to Fiji if you're heading that way.